Salut à tous, j'ai un énorme scoop pour vous aujourd'hui, un truc de dingue. C'est la première fois qu'on va faire un duel time en anglais avec une SEIKO X GUIGIARO. On va se régaler. Je change de langue, c'est parti. Hey guys, I'm so excited. This is the first duel time we're doing in English. I hope my French community will love it. I am pretty sure because I know who is going to talk about a tremendous watch, an asymmetric one. If you are a SEIKO fan, if you are a movie fan, if you are a quartz fan, we are all fans of all these. Let's have a look at this SEIKO from Vuk. Let's start for this first ever dual time in English. Hello Vuk.
Hi to the entire French Dialicious community.
Wonderful. Can you tell us anything in French?
Oui, je parle un peu de français.
Wow, this is wonderful. I hope I speak good enough English so you can understand me. Game plan today is pretty simple, just like any other dual time. We're going to have a great discussion, I believe, on your SEIKO Giugiaro. Giugiaro was a car designer, and he made that absolutely tremendous watch, pretty well known for movie fans. And movie fans with Ripley as a character in Aliens, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so when did you get that watch?
Well, the watch is, this is not the original Ripley. Let's just say it up front. This is a SEIKO Recreation from 2016. The original one designed by Giugiaro was released, in the 80s. But the new one, it was a 2016 release. It was a Japanese only market. But a lot of them, they made 3,000. It was limited to 3,000, and a lot of them made their way to Europe and the United States. It made its way here because it is one of the iconic movie watches that at the time in 2016 was very affordable. If you wanted the Willard, prices of the Willard were going up, the SEIKO Willard. If you wanted, what Kevin Kurtz wore, good luck getting a GMT for a normal price, especially a vintage Vietnam era one. But when they came out, when the Giugiaro Ripley came out, it was a watch that cost, I think, 350 euros, even with the import from Japan. So it was a no-brainer, a 350 euro watch that not only has a great story behind it, but also looks amazing if you're into it.
Yep. Why did you, obviously, on my side, most of my community is aware of that. I'm not that much interested in a watch because it was showcased in a movie. How did this start? I mean, why did you get it? Because we understand SEIKO. Everybody loves SEIKO. If we look at it frankly, most of the people love cars. I would say men. When you're a watch lover, most of the time you like cars. Is this the reason why you went? Is it through cars? But I believe it's through movies. I mean, why is that?
It's 100% through movies. I love cars, like we all do, and Giugiaro was an amazing car designer. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit later. But for me, it was I don't fall for a product placement in movies. But here, it's a different story because Aliens is still a very important movie for me. I studied at NYU. I studied cinema studies, which is film theory and history. And when you apply to the school, the School of the Arts, you have to write an essay in which you tell them why you want to study what you want to study. And it's not nothing. It's a short 1 page, maybe 2 page essay. And I wrote my essay on the movie that defined me. Not because of its brilliance or that I understood something special about it. It is the first movie I remember watching on my own. So when I was a kid, I was 3 or 4 years old. I would I would wake up my parents early in the morning, like 6 in the morning, and ask them to put in a movie for me. And like normal parents, they told me to, get out of their room, which is perfectly understandable. But then my dad taught me how to use the VCR, and we had a huge collection of VHS tapes, and there was probably every single Disney cartoon in there, and I learned to use the VCR with the Disney cartoons, and I still love them. However, one fateful morning, I saw a black box with green letters, and I said, "Well, this looks interesting." There's nothing about the cover that would give away what would happen. And I put it in, and I probably finished 3/4 of the movie before my mom woke up, walked into the room, and saw that I was watching Aliens as a 3-year-old. She wasn't really happy about that, but that started, my love affair with movies, with horror movies especially. I understood even at that age that movie is not real. You can have monsters in a movie and not have them in real life.
Whoa.
But yeah, and then I've watched the movie thousands of times since then. And then as the years went on, I started noticing, oh, they designed these cars, these weapons, and then, well, Ripley was wearing a watch.
Okay, yeah,
It was
yeah, yeah. You're
something
absolutely
special.
right. And in this movie, I believe the android or the robot was
Exactly.
wearing another SEIKO, I would say asymmetrical also, right?
Yeah, it was. But Giugiaro did several of these watches for Seiko, and they were not they were not designed as props. Later on, even now, the other day we had IWC showing off a prop they made for the new Aquaman movie, and then they're going to release it as a regular release for an insane amount of money. This was always designed by Giugiaro to be a sports watch. In terms of being a sports watch, it was inspired by his car designs, and it was supposed to be his vision of a modern racing chrono. Let's call it that. So the 60s, 50s, and 60s traditional racing chronos. This was Giugiaro's vision of a futuristic racing chrono, and when you're one of the best designers of all time and you design a futuristic chrono in the 70s and 80s, late 70s, early 80s, it ends up in a movie that represents the future. Why not? Of course.
Okay, I understand, Vuk. But what I wanted to say in English, and I might say it also in French, is gentlemen. I'm really pleased to welcome Vuk for two reasons: because he has this great Seiko we've never seen on the channel, and also because he has launched a great watch newsletter. Look, we are all crazy in the watch fans, but he's crazier than me. Maybe crazier. I'm not sure, Vuk. I'm not sure. We will check during the show. He's doing a daily newsletter, of course, in English. It is called It's About Time. I will put right below the screen how to subscribe, I believe, right?
Thank
How
you.
we receive
Yeah.
it by mail?
Yeah. It's a daily email newsletter. You receive it in your inbox every day. About lunchtime if you're in Europe, or early morning in the U.S. or later in the evening in Asia. I try to do the times so it works for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's 3,000 words per day, but I love it. People love it. I've built a very nice community around it.
Yeah.
And
One question for you, Vuk. I mean, not one question, but several questions. What was this? I mean, guys, this is a new version released in 2016. The original one was released in 1983, I believe. It was a 7A28, 7000 from Seiko, a quartz watch. I mean, and that's a re-edition that you obviously bought in 2016. I mean, 7 years ago. But was this watch designed in purpose for the movie as a kind of a request, an order, or James Cameron, who was the movie director of the movie, was looking for some goods that put us towards a vision of a kind of future and cybernetic environment, even though Alien is more about wild animal, disgusting animals, etc. But was that made in purpose? First thing, and was that a business partnership to feature a watch? And third question, when did you made the link between the movie that you looked at 4 years old, but I would imagine that at that time you were not a watch enthusiast. So how did this work?
Okay, so let's start with the movie. It is my belief. I could be completely wrong. I'm not a watch historian. These watches were not made for the movie. They were then later. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it was ever used as official. I don't think it was ever used as an official partnership or official promotion for the movie. But Seiko did. You know, they knew what they were doing when they reissued the watch. It was they used Ripley in the name. Well, Seiko doesn't use names, but you know, it was heavily hinted that this is the Ripley, that it was named after the character. So it wasn't made for the movie. It was made by Giugiaro as a racing chrono, but it was then used in the movie because it's a very interesting. You know, the Alien franchise is extremely interesting because it's 4 movies and 4 completely different movies, radically different movies. The first one, directed by Ridley Scott, is a pure horror movie. In the vein of, you know, what people later will be doing with body horror. It was very visceral. It was designed by H.R. Giger. It was very soft and wet and very much organic.
Yep.
And this was the planet where the xenomorphs, the aliens lived in. It was completely wild. And then James Cameron came in later. With his vision of an Aliens movie, which was, you know, Aliens, the second one was more of an action movie, which Cameron was perfect at. But this was the first time he started using his idea of strangers coming into already established worlds and trying to change them. So, you know, where you had the soft and wet world of the aliens, the Marines in Aliens who come in, they're high tech. They have modern weapons, super modern weapons. They have modern armor. They're nothing like the first crew who got killed by the one alien. And you know, they needed a watch that would reflect this hyper modern, hyper stylized, hyper futuristic, and that was the Seiko, because it is that. It looks like nothing else.
Yeah, Vuk, can we circle back to the watch itself? I mean, so did you buy it in 2016 when it was released, or did you buy it later?
I think maybe it was 2017, but around that time. So it was bought new, not used.
So you bought it new at that time?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it was, I believe, roughly $350.
Something like that, maybe a bit more. You know, maybe it was 350 euros to get it here in Europe.
Yeah, because you know, guys, I say guys, but if you are from Australia, I would say mate. At the end of the day, it means les amis. It's pretty simple. I mean, on I would say it's not really yet a vintage, but if you want to buy a second-hand, you know, version of this SCED 035, which is the edition, the 2016 edition, is going to cost you roughly $1,500. And I don't even know if you can still find some out of the box, you know, maybe a new old stock, you know, version of that time. I'm not sure it you know, there is many plastic in there, I believe. So most of the time, the quality of those vintages are terrible. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it a few times before. You know, Giugiaro was a fantastic designer, and one of his best designs is also movie related. It's the DeLorean, the car from Back to the Future. And famously, other than the other famous stories about John DeLorean, the owner, famously, that was a horrible car. It drove horribly. It had a horrible engine. It broke down all the time. It was, you know, a piece of crap.
Yeah,
But it was beautiful. It was futuristic and it was beautiful. I'm not going to say the same about the Seiko, but it's not a high quality watch. It's you're paying $350. You don't get as much from this watch as you would get from other micro brands. So let's look at it a little bit. It has plastic pushers on the top and bottom. The top one starts the chronograph and stops it. The bottom one resets it. So it's like a regular chronograph. But if you press it, you have to press it in really hard, and then it gets stuck inside. So you have to pull it out a little bit if you want to press it again. So it's not,
oh, okay. Okay, but is it, I believe, I read that this one is in steel. I mean, but it looks like a bit like titanium, gray brushed.
I wouldn't call it steel. I think it's 100% aluminum. It's not titanium. It's very light. That's why I wouldn't say it's steel. It obviously has a steel back and probably some insides, but the outer case, you can see how matte it is. So it's highly brushed. It's not polished. It's a brushed aluminum, and with the aluminum bracelet, which is a very interesting bracelet.
Yeah. Can you show us? Can you show us again the bracelet?
Yeah, so as you can see, the bracelet has these three, and this is a one-through-one copy of the original, the one you can see in the movie. So if you pause the movie or if you find the original, you'll see that it has the same three-hole bracelet. It's a 100% a style choice. There's nothing behind, there's no utility behind these holes. But what I will say is, since I shared this watch with my father, who has a bit of a smaller wrist than me, it's extremely easy to size. I can take out links super easy. If I can show it to you. So you see these tops,
Yep.
they have little indents. You just put the tool in, push it, and then this centerpiece comes out, and you can just unhook it and hook it back in, and it works. It's an ingenious system.
Yeah.
I wish more watch brands would use it.
Yeah, but I was going to say something differently. I mean, as I mentioned, I believe most of watch enthusiasts, if any, love Seiko. But if there is one thing that Seiko, not Grand Seiko, but Seiko has really to improve is how they do their bracelet. And that's surprising because we have an outstanding bracelet here. When you look at the Seiko 5 or an XKX, it's just terrible. So this is really surprising. So to me,
I wouldn't call this bracelet super high quality. I would call it interesting.
Yeah, but okay. But what I wanted to say, it was not only regarding quality. It's also, I mean, most of the time Seiko bracelet are thick, fat, and sometimes you ask yourself, but did you work? Did you try to do something? I mean, not even. And this is why when you mention micro brands, I believe some micro brands are really doing a great job in two bracelet. Renzo, for instance, is doing some pretty interesting. But this is not the story we want to talk about. We want to talk about this Seiko. So, did you try it before you bought it?
No, it was ordered online.
Okay, and what was your first impression? First glance on the watch when you received it.
It's deceivingly small. If you look at it, it measures 40. I think it's 40 millimeters across, or 43 millimeters. I think
it's 40 by 42. It depends if we look at I would say the crown guard.
Yeah, so the crown guard has another probably 3 millimeters to the side, but as you can see, you have the crown guard. You have this. It's not a bezel. It's more of a groove channel in the aluminum that surrounds the crystal, and then as you move in, it gets smaller and smaller, and then the dial is actually very small because it also has the rihot around it with the tachymeter, which isn't really a tachymeter, but
I agree. Did you change the battery since you bought it?
I think once.
Okay, so it works properly then.
Yeah. It's great.
Okay. If there is one thing that, you know, for you describe the best this SEIKO GUIGIARO, what would it be? The pusher, the bracelet, the dial, the yellow and orange colors? What would it
No,
be?
it would have to be the asymmetric case. I mean, you know, just a flash of it, you see it's something different. I mean, not many. There aren't a lot of asymmetric cases. You know, I assume we both like them because why not? You know, asymmetric cases are interesting, and you know, we're happy when we get a chronograph with a slight bulge on the side. Oh, look at it, it's asymmetric. This one is, you know, along with a few others, goes really to the side, and that's why I like it.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, guys, if you look at my you know, watch collection on Dialicious.com now, let me tell you, I don't know, Vuk, if you're aware, you can have a look at the collection of a member. If he has shared 10 review on the platform, then you can see on one page his collection. So you can look at mine. You will see I have a Omega Constellation D shape, which is an asymmetric watch, and of course I love it. I would say everybody should love asymmetric watch, but the issue is that if you have one or two watches, then it's getting an issue to have an asymmetric watch, because it's just like if you have one watch and it's a square watch. I mean, it's not something that you can wear, I believe, on a day-to-day basis. But let's circle back to the chronograph, to pushers. I mean, who use a chronograph, quite frankly? I mean, not that often. Maybe it's your case, but most of the time we have a chronograph, but we don't do anything with it.
Yeah, I use it a lot. I use, you know, well, all my watch friends say the same thing. Well, who uses a chronograph, and whoever without diving uses a diving bezel? I use both, and I find them extremely useful in cooking. If you need to do an egg, if you're doing pasta, if you're doing tea, just hit the button, or you know, twist the bezel, and that I love them.
You know what? You know what? I'm asking myself if there is not a monster into Vuk's stomach, because you're the first one that used the chronograph. Of course, it was a kind of pun, so sometimes it's useful, and where it is useful for me, it's not to use it because no one uses a watch. Let's put it this way, okay? But for the fun, to look at it, just to lose the chronograph hand, you know, walking, sliding, clicking.
Yeah, there's nothing better when it resets, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Is there an adjective you might not be aware, but everybody on Dialicious, I mean, on the show,
I know,
on YouTube or on the platform, has to choose at least one adjective that for you summarize the watch? What would it be?
I would say funky.
Funky. Wow, that's something I like. I'm not a great funky fan, but sometimes it really works, and I believe in this case it works. This was great. I hope, French people, les amis en français, j'espère que vous passez un bon moment. I hope the other one that speaks English spend a good time. Now we are going to move to the second part of this show. And second part is that we understood that Vuk has a SEIKO GUIGIARO asymmetric watch, and I'm going to provide you three alternatives. We're going to take a look at it, and you're going to rank them. You're going to provide them, give them a review from 1 to 5 stars, just like on the Dialicious platform. So I have chosen, it was not that easy, Vuk. I have chosen three alternatives. Not all of them are asymmetric, but they are in the same, I would say, late 70s, I would say mid 70s, mid 80s, you know?
Okay.
Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay. First alternative, we have a Heuer Formula One. It's a vintage one, not a new edition. How do you feel about this one?
It's very interesting. I have a thing with Heuer. You know, Heuer with their vintage pieces are probably the things to have, right? They're incredible, they're beautiful, they work perfectly. And then when Tag bought them, they kind of went, you could always say, but it's ungrateful to say that, but you could always say they sold out, right? They became the stadium band that only, they don't do their old hits anymore. And I disliked Tag Heuer for a while. I really didn't like them. I thought they did boring things. I think this is nothing against people who own, we all have our tastes and interests, but I couldn't really get into Tag Heuer. Only this year have they really got my heart, and I think they made the comeback of the year this year with the glass box.
Yes.
But then, I was looking. It's funny how that happens. I stopped liking them, and then I always remember disliking. I occasionally watch Formula One, and I remember disliking the Formula One watches. I thought they looked cheap and boring, and well, not boring. They never look, but they look cheapish. And then in the last couple of months, I've been looking through Chrono 24, and a few of these Formula One pieces ended up in my watch list. Just to see how the prices are moving. I like them. I like them a lot. I think they're fun. I think they have the color choices are great. If you're looking for, I'm not sure how a vintage one would stand, the everyday wear environment, but I would love, this as a great summer watch. Perfect.
Yeah, but I believe that's a vintage one. If you look at the bezel, the bezel is all in plastic, and I've been looking for this watch for a while. I mean, they have some blue ones, yellow one, gray one, dark ones,
The red
etc.
ones are crazy.
They are really funky, these watches. I mean, I personally I love Tag Heuer, but because it was my first watch, this is how I started into the watch collection when I was 30 years old. So it's a pretty long time ago. And to me, it reflects also an era. I'm not a watch historian neither, but it represents an era in 1985 when Tag bought the brand from, I would say it was from Piaget. It was not at that time that the watch industry really restart. It was 5 years later, in the early 90s. So here you have something that, at the end of the day, looks like a great brand, racing brand, with flashy colors in plastic, just like a jersey, when you're on a racing track with all your tags everywhere. I mean, you feel great with it, but when you go back home, you ask yourself, I can't be dressed this way all the time, right? So this is how I like this Tag Heuer. I mean, so maybe someday I will get one. Obviously, this one is a quartz one. How many, what would be your average ranking from 1 to 5?
Considering I would like to own one, probably, I would give it an easy 4.
An easy 4 out of 5. Okay, don't start too high because we have 2 other alternatives. Huh? Okay.
We'll see.
Okay. Second one, French brand. I'm not sure. You know this one. That's a Lip Mach 2000 from the. It's a new edition. That's not a vintage one. It's a watch that was designed by Roger Talon in the mid-70s, at a time where Lip was really struggling before, almost dying, and now trying to circle back in the business. That's a funky colored asymmetric watch, just like your Giugiaro.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting mix of. I love it. I love Lip. Don't underestimate Lip. I think a lot more people know about it than either from it being the occasional presidential watch in France, right?
Yeah.
Or just for its designs. I think this design is iconic. I think it mashes up fantastically. The shape of the 70s. Where everything is a little bit different, a little bit funky, as you said, a little bit weird. And then, a very clean, very mid-century modern, everybody always talks about mid-century modern being a US-led movement, but we all know it's not. It's a French-led movement, from French and German. It stems from Bauhaus and from what Corbusier did, and these colors are very much what Le Corbusier would do on buildings.
Yeah.
It's very much, I have it here, the hangar designed by Charles and Ray Ames with the colored balls. So, you know, you have the 50s colors, the pop of 50s colors, and then, you know, this fantastic, brilliant asymmetric design of the 70s. I love it. I love the bracelet. I don't know what that is. That's probably some type of rubber.
Yes, yes, yes.
With,
No, I don't put the size of the case because, you know, if you have a big wrist or a small wrist, then it's too big, it's too small. The only thing that I can say is that the vintage one, they are really big. I'm a huge 70s fan, but I have a hard time with this one that is a bit too much funny with those colors, you know, like you mentioned in Charles Eames, but we could mention those colors that almost looks like the Mondrian colors from from the artist. That's pretty strange because Lip has asked 6 or 7 designers at that time to try to save the brand, and you had you mentioned again Charles Eames, you had Isabelle Hébé that was also a designer that was working for his Saint Laurent, for his shops, you know, his stores. And Roger Talon was an industrial designer, Michel Boyer, and all these people. So it should be a huge DNA to relaunch the brand. And right now, I believe they're trying, but they don't get it on the new neo-vintage era that, you know, new brands and micro brands are doing. They should have the same potential than Yema. But I don't know for what reason, for now, it doesn't match, probably because they are doing some new edition with basic, low entry-level movement. I would say just standard quality. I believe not enough to match the will, you know, the interest of watch enthusiasts. That's pretty sad at the end of the day.
I was just talking about this yesterday. I think we're on the edge of, you know, if you look at all the micro brands, especially the French ones, they're doing watches from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. They're doing, you know, this vintage revival of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So like the end of the 40s with the very classical styled sector dial watches up to the late 60s, maybe even early 70s with you know retro style divers and sports watches. But I think we're right on the edge of 80s and 90s watches becoming cool again. And I think Lip is a bit more towards the 80s in their, you know, I think they hit their cool factor in the 80s.
Yep.
Rather than the 70s. So I think the watch community needs to grow up a little bit more. By that I don't mean, you know, I actually mean growing up, because, you know, I'm 36 years old, and now I'm looking at 80s and 90s watches because those were things that I saw as a kid, and they're inciting emotion in me. Same thing happened with cars. You know, when my generation got rich from tech usually, and reached an age where they could spend, you know, obscene amounts of money, you would see, you know, BMWs from the 80s and 90s explode in price. Nissans from the 80s and 90s explode in price because these were cars we saw as kids and want now.
Yep.
I think the same is going to happen with watches, but a little bit it's a little bit divorced from cars. It's a few years off because, you know, when you're 12, you're into cars. But when you're 20, you become into watches. So it's an 8-year. I think we're an 8 or 10-year movement off of cars.
Yeah.
So
You're absolutely right. And I'm going to give you a sad example. I mean, I'm a classic car, you know, enthusiast and owner. If you look at this market, for instance, 40 and 1920s cars are dropping dramatically, and the reason is quite simple. The watch owners and the car owners and car enthusiasts for such cars, they're dying.
Yeah.
So have you ever dreamt You see my great English? Have you ever dreamt, guys?
Perfect.
Of a 4T? No. Have we ever dreamt, my friend, of a LEAP Mach 2000? Of course. Okay, so how would you rank it from 1 to 5?
I can't give it a 5, unfortunately, because, you know, the SEIKO is a 5 in this scenario.
Come on, but if you give a 5, okay, you will have an opportunity, Vuk, to change your mind once you would have seen the third alternative.
I would give this 4.5 stars.
4.5, okay. Third alternative, something totally different, not asymmetric, 70 style, Longines Comet. Yeah. That's a vintage one. I believe Longines has not reissued it, probably in the next years, hopefully.
It's probably a matter of time, yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about it?
I love it. I don't know what I love more. Do I love the case more, or the crazy, the crazy way of telling time? But it's not, it's not as crazy. If you look at it, it's obviously just two hands that are replaced by two rings.
Yes.
The outside ring is minutes. The dot are minutes, and the arrow is obviously hours. I think this arrow, probably the best hour hand I've seen this year.
That's great. And you I mean, reading hour differently, I mean, obviously it's not a trilobe that we have here.
Yeah.
I believe it's interesting to put ourselves into I think it's a 70s watch. This watch was in yellow, red, green, blue. It just mentioned that Longines is a huge brand, huge caliber, company. But at that time, innovation had to go through something fancy differently because, electronic watches from Asia were already there. And what the Swiss, Beta 21 Consortium was doing was great from a technology standpoint, but they didn't have the industrial organization to produce massively millions and millions and millions of electronic watches. This is what they've been passed, I believe, by the Japanese, SEIKO-based quartz movement. This one is really big on your wrist because there is no bezel, you see. So if you have it's totally different than your Giugiaro. It might be a 36, but then the dial is 36, and the 36 dial is huge.
Yeah. I would say it's probably, the one on the Giugiaro is probably about 36, 37, when you probably that size. So same size dial and practically no case on the sides, which is really interesting. And then, a huge top and bottom. A very interesting thing.
So how are you going to do?
If you look at all three watches that you chose.
Yeah. Which one then do you prefer? Because you put 4. Let me wrap up. You put 4 for the Heuer Formula One. It's a vintage one. And then you put the 4.5, 4.5 for the LEAP Mach 2000. What are you going to do with this one?
With the Longines, I would go 3.5, and that's not a knock on the Longines. I would love to own it. But this is the exact order I would like to own them. So LEAP first, Heuer second, and then Longines third.
LEAP first, okay? Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
And you're happy with that? Okay, so you know how it works? That's the first time probably you see the show because usually it's in French. And even though we understood, Vuk, that your French is starting, which is a good thing. The winner of today, dual time, is the LEAP Mach 2000. Honestly, I thought you were gonna go more on the Longines Comet, but that's always great to have those discussions because we're all here about emotion. I hope the community will have discovered some new watches and a new way to address emotions because obviously you're not French, you've not been raised in French, you're English speaking, so your culture is obviously different. But at the end of the day, we love the same thing, which are watches.
Yeah.
Vuk, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So guys, If you want to participate to this dual time in English, it's pretty simple. www.dialicious.fr. You have the form, you just fill it and say, well, I have this watch, I would like to participate. It's the same thing than in French. We have a discussion, we figure out how we can record. Obviously, if you're based in France, near Paris, we can do it into the sofa. You've not been into the Dialicious sofa, but it's the best place in the world. And maybe you can win the Dialicious cap, but Dialicious caps are not, you know, something you can get through dual time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this first ever dual time in English. My apologies for my poor English. Thank you so much, Vuk. Bye-bye.